Since the How to Train Your Dragon series came to an end with the third and final movie in 2019, since then, the shelves have been barren of How to Train Your Dragon toys and merchandise. But, with the release of the live-action remake this year, toys and merchandise for the series have been making a comeback. So, let's have a look at the first How to Train Your Dragon figures in 6 years, as well as having a look at their miniature versions, their new dragon cards, and comparing them to their original figures. So, here we are with Toothless plus Hiccup, the Gronckle plus Fishlegs, the Deadly Nadder plus Astrid, and last but not least, the Red Death. So let's get started with Toothless. Already just looking at the packaging, I've noticed some pretty cool details. So over here on the side of the box, there's the Strike Class logo, that already is pretty cool, but right above that we have a sort of wooden sculpture of a Night Fury. And all of the other boxes have different versions for the dragon that's included in that package. So I think that's a really neat detail for the packaging. The back of course shows all the different dragons and figures included in this wave, all of which are on the table right in front of me. So let's get Toothless and Hiccup out of the box. And that should be Toothless freed. Here's the attachable tail, and now to free Hiccup. Uh-oh. Do you think that's foreshadowing? Okay, we've got them all out of the box. Now we just need to attach Toothless's tail, and that should be Toothless complete. Okay, so where to begin with this one? Firstly, you can open up the head like this. Now, on the packaging, all of these figures boast real feel dragon wings. And what that means is all of the wings are actually made out of some sort of flexible rubbery material. Of course with realistic dragon wing textures along them. So I think that's a really nice idea to set these apart from the figures of the original series, which wings were just stiff plastic. See, here we have one of the original figures from the original franchise, and you can see with the wings that they're a really hard plastic rather than the flexible rubbery material of these new ones. So I think that's really awesome. Now for articulation, the wings can flap, and of course because of the real feel dragon wings they can also bend and stuff like that, though you might want to be a bit careful not to accidentally rip them. All of the legs can move, and you can spin the tail around in its swivel. I'm not sure if that's intended or not. Now all of the dragons on their saddles have these little stub things up here, and now what those are for are so that you can get the dragon rider and actually sit them on your dragon without it falling off. But for now, let's just look at the Hiccup figure. I didn't notice this before, but it actually has joints at the knees so you can bend them. It looks like Hiccup's leg is a bit loose on my copy though, which is a bit ironic. But now, let's see if we can attach Hiccup to Toothless. And here we have Hiccup riding Toothless. I had a bit of trouble attaching the figure to the saddle, but it's not too bad. Just had a little bit of trouble with that faulty leg. Now let's have a look at that head-on view. You know, the head-on view actually isn't as bad as I was expecting. Here's the side-on view with the wing up. There you can get a good look at his body shape and his anatomy, which I still think looks a bit too bulky to be a Night Fury. But overall for Hiccup and Toothless, this is actually a pretty good figure. Now the human figures are about to be expected. There's a little bit of a paint blemish there on this copy, but honestly the detail isn't that bad for figures this small. He's got some equipment there on his belt. I think there's even some silver buckles on his vest and stuff. Not too shabby, aside from the faulty leg. Now this Toothless is of course the one that comes with the newly made leather tail, not pre-being shot down natural black tail, or post-Red Death nice new red tail. But there are some other figures of both of those different tail variants. Now, along with the mainline figures, they've also released a series of mystery minifigures, including dragon cards. So let's have a look at the Night Furies. These things come with a nice little display piece. Their boxes are themed to be the Book of Dragons, and then you fold open the book, and that acts as a nice little display piece for the figure, with the background here also flipping over to reveal a dragon card. So let's have a look at the Night Fury's dragon card, and see if the stats are all as they should be. Okay, attack 15, yep that adds up, speed 20, just as it should be, armor 18, that's interesting, and firepower 14. Now, these minifigures are sold as mystery boxes, so you're not supposed to know what dragon you're gonna get. But a pro tip is that on the top of the box, there's a 2-digit code that corresponds to what dragon is inside. So if you find a list of the codes, or use a video like this one by Bluestreak, you'll know what code corresponds to what dragon, so you can choose which dragon you're gonna get. Look at that face-on perspective. And a few of these dragons do have an extra shiny variant, and the Night Fury is certainly no different. Now, the Night Fury Shiny variant comes with an all-new dragon card. The Shiny Night Fury itself is just the basic Night Fury but with some extra glitter and slightly transparent wings. But the dragon card has an all new design with even more stats than the original did. So let's have a look at this here. That's yet another goofy face-on view. So of course, attack 15, speed 10, armor 18, I still question that, firepower 14, this wasn't included in the other one, shot limit 6. Now that is accurate to the original series. Venom 0, of course, strength 6, now that's interesting, and stealth 18. Yep, that'll adds up. So that is everything for the Night Fury. Let's move on to the Deadly Nadder. This one is definitely the one that I've been the most excited to opening. This alongside the Red Death. So I'm super excited to finally open this thing. Of course, on the side of the box they have the Tracker class symbol, not Sharp class. I've never been a fan of them moving the Deadly Nadder over to Tracker class. It was literally the mascot of the Sharp class. I really don't like that they've changed it to Tracker class. And unfortunately, it seems like they're going with that in the live action universe as well. But it does also have the wooden pattern of the Deadly Nadder on the side. A really cool detail yet again. I really liked the Deadly Nadder's live action redesign, so let's get it opened. And the Deadly Nadder is freed. I'm really liking this one already, but I've got to get Astrid out before I can have a look at that. Okay, I've got the Deadly Nadder and Astrid out of the box. Let's have a look at the Deadly Nadder. Alright, here we have it. Of course, just like with Toothless, you can open its mouth. Whoa, it actually opens up really wide. The detail on the head sculpt is absolutely incredible. You can also see the reins attached to the Nadder's head, down its neck and up to its saddle. Good quality too, no paint blemishes or anything. Of course, the Deadly Nadder can also flap its wings. Wow, the wings are actually really satisfying to flap on this one. And of course it has those flexible real feel dragon wings. Again, you can see really nice scale textures all over. The textures and details on the wings are really good as well. Now the one area where the paint is a bit lackluster is the tail. Firstly, the tan underbelly cuts off very abruptly at the tail piece, and there's absolutely no colouring on the spines. Oh yeah, one other downside is that the undersides of the wings aren't painted. The top sides of the wings are very nicely painted, but the undersides aren't painted at all, which incidentally you can't see when the dragon is still in the box. Now, my copy of this figure has a bit of a paint scratch at the very tip of the nasal horn, which, incidentally, so does my figure of the original Deadly Nadder. Getting these figures side by side with their originals is a really good way to see the differences in their designs. And here's the Astrid figure, looking just as much like Astrid as she does in the movie. Make of that what you will. Now let's attach Astrid to her Deadly Nadder. Oh no. Okay, so do be warned, the legs on these figures do seem a bit flimsy. They pop back on no problem, but still they are a bit loose. The figures do look pretty good when they're riding their dragons though. Oh, okay, so when Astrid is on her saddle, you can't actually open up the Nadder's mouth as wide as it could otherwise, because the spike crown bumps into Astrid and it can't open up all the way, so that's something to note. But here's Stormfly and Astrid next to Hiccup and Toothless. Toothless and Stormfly are such an iconic duo, their designs complement each other so well when put next to each other. And let's not forget to have a look at the Deadly Nadder's minifigure and dragon card. The minifigure is really nice, but has the same problem as the full-size thing, where the tops of the wings are patterned, but the undersides aren't. And here's a look at the dragon card. So it looks like all the different stats on these cards are exactly as they were in the original series, with attack 10, speed 8, armor 16, and firepower 18. So now let's have a look at the Gronckle, and then finally we'll have a look at the Red Death. Of course, the side of the box has the Boulder class logo and a really cool wooden figurehead of the Gronckle. So let's get the Gronckle and Fishlegs out of the box. So that's Fishlegs' Gronckle Meat Lug freed, and now for Fishlegs. And that is Fishlegs freed. Now, interestingly, the Gronckle figure has a bobblehead. Yeah, for some reason this one has a bobblehead, but the other ones don't. Now, as well as a bobblehead, you can also open the jaw. Oh, okay, the Gronckle is very cute, I will give it that. So, this Gronckle figure has a bobblehead and movable jaws. Now, what's interesting is there are also two other Gronckle figures out there, one of which without the bobblehead and without the movable jaw, and another without the opening jaw but with the bobblehead, which I also managed to get hold of. So this much cheaper Gronckle figure doesn't include Fishlegs, doesn't have a saddle so it's a wild Gronckle, and just has the bobblehead without the movable jaw. So let's open this one up too. And that is the wild Gronckle freed. So again, remember, this figure is a lot cheaper than the other one, so keep that in mind as I compare the two. So because this one doesn't have the movable jaw, its mouth is always just stuck open. And because it's a wild untrained Gronckle, it doesn't have the saddle unlike this one. So you won't be able to get your figures to ride it. But of course this figure has the real feel dragon wings, which I must say are probably at their least effective with the Gronckle, since the wings are so small, there's not really much to bend. And they don't really have much texturing on them either. So you can make these ones flap up and down, but the big difference with this one is that, of course, it doesn't have the real feel dragon wings, so they're a lot stiffer, but they're also on a swivel rather than a hinge like the other ones. So these wings you can fully pose all the way around. With the other ones, you're limited to just being able to move them up and down. So despite being the cheaper figure, this version does have some incentive to get it. I do actually really like the bobblehead though, it's really fun. Very interesting how even on the main figure they kept the bobblehead though, just to a lesser extent because the saddle blocks some of the space that the Gronckle uses to move his head around. As much as I'm not a big fan of the Gronckle's redesign, this is actually a really good figure, and honestly the same goes for this one. Now let's have a look at the Fishlegs figure here. Lots of detail on this one. You can see a little knife in his pocket, he has his belt that he keeps his dragon cards in, and I have a feeling the legs might be a bit sturdier on this one because they're a lot thicker than on the other two. I do also think Fishlegs was casted quite well in the movie. Alright, here's Fishlegs attached to the saddle, and surprisingly, he was actually a lot easier to attach than the other two. I am actually really pleasantly surprised with this toy, and it's even made me warm up to the Gronckle's redesign a little bit. And that leaves us with just one dragon left. The Red Death. Now, there are actually two different figures of the Red Death. There's this one, and then there's another one that's even bigger. But I don't have that one here today, so let's have a look at this one. The box on this thing is really cool, and you'll notice it actually comes with a mini little Toothless here. Now, on the side here, it doesn't have the Stoker class symbol, and it doesn't have a custom figurehead for the dragon, but it does have this one here that they use for all of the other ones that they didn't get custom figureheads made for. And here we have the Red Death herself. There's a button on the back here that when you push it down, it flaps both of the wings and opens the dragon's mouth. Now, no sound effects come with this one, but I'm pretty sure they do with the other bigger one. You'll notice what a wide maw this dragon has, and you can see down its throat. On its stomach there's a hatch, and you can open up that hatch to get the dragons that you feed it back out. Which means we need to get the Red Death some food. He looks so scared. And here's the Toothless minifigure. Let's have a look at how this works. And down the gullet. So, when Toothless is done making his way through the digestive system, you can retrieve him through the stomach hatch here. And Toothless is back out. Now, I was not expecting this, but in here, it actually looks like there's a Red Death dragon card. So, let's get this thing out. Oh my gosh, it's taped in there really well. Let's have a look at this then. Attack 28, Speed 7, that adds up, Armor 30, makes sense, and Firepower 27, that all makes sense to me, and of course the Stoker class logo. Now, this little Toothless figure might be the only one that you can feed it, but the rest of them scale really nicely with it. And that is just a few of the new figures released for the new live-action How to Train Your Dragon movie, making these the first How to Train Your Dragon figures in 6 years. All around, I am really satisfied with these new figures. They do justice to the original figures as worthy successors, and are true and faithful to their new live-action redesigns.